Hello, and welcome to the latest in our ScreenDaily Talks series of live discussions of hot topics affecting the global film industry. I'm Jeremy Kay, America's editor of Screen International. Today's session will look at how three emerging SVoD platforms are thriving in a busy landscape. As these services proliferate around the world and the lockdown brings a surge in engagement for platforms and their partners, we have three top executives from BritBox, Roku, and Philo joining us to discuss the streaming ecosystem and how they see it evolving as they work with content creators and rights holders, forge clear brand identities, and develop growth strategies. Before we meet our guests in a second, a few housekeeping notes. I will moderate a 30-minute discussion before we open it up to questions from you, our live audience. If you have a question, please use the Q&A channel rather than the chat room, which our online editor, Orlando Parfit, will be monitoring. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. Now let's say hi to our panelists. Soumya Sriraman is CEO and president of BritBox, the joint venture between BBC subsidiary BBC Studios and ITV that streams popular British content. In less than 3 years, she has led the platform to more than 1.2 million subscribers in North America. Prior to joining the service, she was EVP of Franchise and Digital Enterprises at BBC Worldwide North America, now BBC Studios America, and before that, served as President and CEO at Palisades Tarleton, US and UK. Hi, Soumya.
Hi, Jeremy. Thank you for having me. I mean, you did such a great job of setting it up. I don't think I have anything left to say.
Well, we'll hear more from you in a moment. Welcome. Rob Holmes is Vice President of Programming and Streaming at streaming platform Roku, where he oversees the development and growth of the Roku channel, as well as programming strategy. Prior to Roku, Rob was with Comcast, where he developed and executed the advertising strategy and ran projects across the broadcast and cable networks, advertising, digital, and the film studio. He has held senior roles at tech startups, including Voodoo, and oversaw corporate development at MGM. Hi, Rob.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And we also have Matt Stein, who served for the past 2 years as head of brand and creative at streaming service Philo, which launched in November 2017, and has worked with network partners to develop multi-touchpoint awareness and acquisition campaigns. Prior to Philo, Matt spent 20 years in the cable universe, developing, writing, and producing content for VH1, Spike TV, Discovery Kids, and the Travel Channel. He also oversaw marketing for networks including BBC America, Science Channel, and Animal Planet. Greetings, Matt.
Cheers, how are you?
Well, thank you all for joining us today. And we're going to start off with our session before we go to audience questions later. So let me start with you, Soumya. Tell us about the impetus behind creating BritBox and how did you get involved? Let's start with that first.
So BritBox came to be because back in 2013, when Matt and I were working together at BBC and we had the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, it seemed like there wasn't going to be a bigger moment at the BBC past that. It seemed like that was it. We've reached the pinnacle of everything that we were going to be able to accomplish. And I set about to work on a business plan for a direct-to-consumer SVoD service. And you looked at the market around and you were like, this is a very crowded marketplace, which sets up the topic that we're about to talk about today so well. And we're like, so what is it that we can do that BBC America isn't already doing, or the market need isn't being met? And we came up with a business plan that took a little while to get approved. Got approved probably a year and a half after. And we would have probably launched in 2016 when ITV came our way, and we engaged with them to form a joint venture to create what I think is definitely the better proposition in the long run. I think this is what BritBox should be, could be, would be, all of those wonderful things. We would have, like I said, we would have launched in 2016. Fast forward, we actually ended up launching on March 7th of 2017, and we haven't looked back since. What was originally contemplated as something that could sit very nicely along what was already happening in the market, I think we've now come into our own, and yes, we're sitting alongside them, but we're not skulking. We're proudly have our chest out going, yep, we belong. So I don't know if this sets up for you.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear. And look, we'll come back to you in a moment, Soumya. We'll hear some more about BritBox. I just want to turn to you now, Rob, and ask you this. We're seeing more and more subscription services come to market, of course, and particularly advertising-supported services. How should content creators be thinking about the AVOD model, the ad-supported model?
Sure. So look, I think that's a really important question. There's obviously a lot of time being spent on SVoD overall, but I think one of the core consumer value drivers here, core reasons for consumers change, is the value that they're looking for across the OTT platform. So sort of in this transition from the cable world to OTT, they're frankly just looking to save money. So obviously adding some number of SVoD services is great and it has great content and they're really excited about that. But I don't think we're going to see them stacking up the same amount of services and spending the same amount of money that they spend in the cable world today. And they sort of get there to be able to satisfy their content interests by supplementing that with AVOD and ad-supported content. And there are certainly folks in the SVoD world who are also adding on ad-supported content within their service as a way to bring down the total cost of their subscription. I think that's very smart. But from a consumer standpoint, I think they're also just looking for free, right? Free is a great price, very compelling to users. I think it's one of the things that Roku has done really well for a long time. And we constantly are talking to our users. 40% of recent cord cutters cited the availability of free content as one of the reasons that they cut the cord. We see it as a category that's growing faster than subscription and virtual MVPD overall in terms of ad-supported content. So I think that there's really this underlying dynamic of the consumers want to save money. You know, if you think about the prime things in their life, they've got their cell phone, their internet connection, and their entertainment budget. And I think over the last 10 years, I don't know which one it is, whether it's internet or cell phone, but those have become more important to them than their entertainment budget overall. They would rather have those things than their cable bill. And so it's really sort of as they stack rank the things in their house that are important to them, that entertainment spend is going to come down. And so ad-supported content is just a way that they supplement and they're able to get access to great content that they love to consume, but without having to pay anything more for it every month. So happy to talk more about that, but I think it's really a huge trend here. And as much of attention we've been spending on SVoD, I think AVOD is one of the really big drivers for the transition to OTT.
Okay, thanks, Rob. We want to hear more about that later. And Matt, come to you now and tell us about Philo in this increasingly crowded TV landscape. Where and how does Philo fit in?
So Philo is, virtual MVPD. So we are, sort of 60, what was, I guess, formerly known as cable channels, 60 plus, but, now we, they're sort of available through us, kind of anywhere you want, and, sort of through our apps or on connected television. We're hyper focused on bringing the most value possible at the lowest cost to our consumers. So we've crafted a skinny bundle that is focused on entertainment television. We don't have news and we don't have sports, which helps keep the subscription costs down. And we, sort of are really kind of hyper focused on this sort of, reality, kids, sort of factual, and premium scripted. That's on networks like AMCN, OWN, BET. So it's really how do we kind of build out this robust package and a kind of fully featured product where consumers who are sort of making these choices. I think Rob is right. Like you're not going to see people just kind of build out their own package that is as expensive as a cable subscription was. So, sort of think we think people are still going to be hungry for live television, the comfort food that they have experienced for the last, sort of 40 years through cable. They're going to be looking for that in, sort of cheaper ways. I think as you kind of start to tick the must-haves, you look at your budget and you're like, all right, I don't have a lot left. We think we sort of are really kind of fulfilling that need, sort of for people that still want to have this kind of collection of TV that they can kind of turn on, brands that they are, sort of love and are very familiar with, and can still feel connected and, sort of watch, House Hunters at 9 o'clock on HGTV, or, Love and Hip Hop when it's on VH1.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. So I've come back to you now, Soumya, and tell us a bit more about the service. I mean, do you, when you're looking at this, obviously you've been growing this business now. Let's just talk about, the future for services like BritBox. One imagined you'd be fairly bullish about this space. Tell us about your thoughts on, is there a future for services like this, and why, and how do they fit in?
I'm even more confident than ever that people like here are here to stay and rule the roost. The fact of the matter is, you could absolutely say, with so many services, why do you need one more? And I would say that two things have happened that are propelling the case for someone like us to be here and thrive. The first one is that everyone else has to be everything for everybody, which means that's where substitution has to happen. As Matt said, if you're saying, I have all of these cable channels to choose from, I'm gonna go for the package that gives me what I need, and that's enough. I'm gonna move on. The same is gonna happen, I think, with ad-funded channels. If everyone's gonna give you sort of similar things, right? You open an email from Peacock yesterday, and they've got Roseanne. I'm trying to remember where I was watching Roseanne last month. Or the annoying part is I was watching, was it the Harry Potter movies on HBO? Now they're on Peacock. I am very confused about where I'm gonna go to watch whatever it is. But you don't have to be confused about BritBox. Be very clear in what it is that we are promising, and be very clear in how it is that we're delivering that promise. There is one other thing that I think has happened that I think also propels this. I started off by saying there are two things. The first one is that everyone is in everything for everybody. We're not, which means if you're going to choose to churn out, you're going to choose to churn out of all of these things that somewhat feel similar. I'm going to go in and out of those. Here are my 2 or 3 things that appeal to me, whether it's anime, whether it is classic television, whether it's British television. These are things that appeal to me as a person. I will have that as my core. Everything else is substitution. The second thing that's happened, I think, that helps us, again, something that we thought a lot about when we contemplated this business plan back in the day. I remember I spent hours stressing about this, and this is, do brands matter? Or is technology the only thing that matters? Is a means to an end? What does Netflix mean after all? Netflix became synonymous with a technical way of delivering content? Right? What is Roku? The box in my house? Yes, yet, back in the day when I needed to watch something, I'd be like, let's Roku it. And it's become these things. And I think that we back in the day chose that a brand means something. And if you think about it, we've gone from technology-led SVoDs to brand-led SVoDs. We're in the world of HBO Max, Disney Plus, Peacock, Discovery. And we sit really nicely alongside them. We're a brand-led service.
Okay, thanks, Soumya.
Thanks.
Yeah, and you mentioned Roku, so let's come back to Rob now. I have another one for you, Rob. Just giving our viewers an idea of each of your platforms. What benefits do content owners get from partnering with a service like Roku, as opposed to launching on their own?
Sure. And first, I think we've made it when we become a verb. So if to Roku something is a specific action, I think we can sort of declare victory. But that's great to hear. So look, I mean, I think there's 2 ways to answer this question. One is at the platform level, right? So at the platform level, we work with thousands of channels across multiple territories and are very happy to continue to add channels to that mix, adding channels all the time. And but I think increasingly, and Soumya spoke about this sort of the increasing competition in this space. And it's getting harder and harder and more expensive to stand out. If you look at what happened last year with the launch of Disney Plus, if that's now the bar for launching a streaming service, like 5 companies in the world can do it. And so, I think that as you think about what you need to do to be successful to launch a service, you have to have great content, right? I think that's the sort of the bar. You've got to start there. Consumers have to want to watch what you have. If you don't, you can't get out of the starting blocks. But in addition to that, you now, in order to be successful, have to create a great experience. You have to have good technology. You have to have a front end and a back end. You have to have recommendations. All these things that keep users coming back and understand who the user is and make the experience more and more relevant to them, whether you're a programming niche to begin with or not. You then have to market to the users. So you have to acquire those users, and then you have to retain them. And you have to retain them through both their experience, but also retention marketing and sort of reactivation. And then particularly in the AVOD space, but also in the SVOD, you have to monetize them. And so whether that's a billing relationship that you have with them, or that's advertising that you use to create value for the content owners. That's a list of 4 things that, again, coming back to that Disney point, there's only a small number of companies in the world that can really make the investment to do all of that well. And so one of the things that we offer with respect to the Roku channel is we ask our partners to concentrate on the content. So you bring great content to us, you bring a great service to us, because we both have ad-supported content and subscriptions that we resell, things like Stars, Showtime, and others. And we aggregate all of that across an existing service, an existing platform. So we take care of the experience. We have a large investment in machine learning and algorithms that we can use to drive that consumer experience. It's fast and performant. All the things that consumers expect from the big apps, you can have at any level by partnering with us. We also do a lot of the marketing, so the customer acquisition and retention. We use the tools that we have on our platform, which are always available to third parties, as part of our partnership, but we leverage those to really drive the growth of our partners in the Roku channel. And then finally, monetization. So we have existing billing relationships with many of our users, and we also have a really robust ad sales capability. And so we are in market selling the advertising opportunity for OTT to all the large global players and agencies. And so you benefit from that as well. And so increasingly, we talk to partners about, you can go ahead and do a direct to consumer, but there's a lot of costs there. And if you're trying to figure out how to play in OTT, what that presence looks like, we can help you do it more profitably so that you can be in that business and grow longer. So that's sort of, I think, how we'd split the 2.
Okay, thanks, Rob. And Matt, coming back to you now, just talk to us about how the Philo brand has been shaped. And how it's evolved since since the service launched.
Sure. So I joined right before launch, and I think I was fortunate to kind of come into a place where we didn't really have a consumer-facing brand that needed to be rebuilt. We also didn't have anything that we could kind of glom onto, like sort of a telecom kind of parent company that either did or did not have a good kind of consumer-facing relationship. I think we were kind of a blank slate. There was a college product that Philo had, sort of the legacy business, but I think that was not something that we were kind of leaning into. It was really, where do we sit in the kind of the matrix of OTT services? How can we stand out? We knew our value prop was this really kind of very well built, powerful product with really inexpensive bundle, but kind of beyond that, who were we and what kind of white space could we occupy? And I think when I started, I was talking to Andrew McCollum, the CEO of the company, and he was really very passionate about wanting to build a better way to watch television. And I remember even before I came on board, just that resonated with me, just sort of how kind of focused he was on sort of the experience and wanting to make just truly committed to wanting to make a better way to watch. And, that sort of feeling was echoed through the, at the time it was maybe 30 or 40 people at the company. We're small and scrappy, and we still are small and scrappy. But, so it just became very apparent that we were, unlike the telecoms and the sort of big media conglomerate products, we were this kind of group of people passionate about television that wanted to sort of make the experience better and kind of bring the things that people love to TV back to the streaming universe. And then, sort of taking a page from my BBC Doctor Who days, I really thought about, the kind of idea of lowering the wall between the audience and the sort of the product, right? Like if we can be television fans too, I think the audience can relate to that. And so we really set out to be this sort of almost like the independent bookstore of streaming services, this sort of place that you kind of come into and actually want to spend some time sort of tooling around, and, you care about the staff recommendations and are, sort of looking at, the sort of the little table with the staff picks. I think that was sort of who we thought about. We thought we wouldn't want to be another service that was trashing the competition or, sort of really kind of going, sort of like, hey, Sling, we think you suck. Like that was not that wasn't going to be our tone of voice. We wanted to just be like really passionate fans of TV. And, I think that really resonated. We, then through, I think the first 2 years or so, really hyper focused on our performance media. So, I think from that, we got a lot of learnings about what messages worked with which audiences, when to focus on the, sort of unlimited DVR versus the number of streams versus the package, how to lean into content versus, how to kind of shape a product message, what ads, sort of perform really well on, our connected TV partners. So we started to get this data and we could kind of build together a story, that would work sort of deep funnel. But I think we were still toying with the, the sort of the top of the funnel kind of brand position. And, as the audience sort of grew and we started to see that we were, doing really well with maybe some audiences that were underserved, that were not being spoken to as much, particularly Black women, we thought, there's an inclusivity that we wanted to focus on, an approach that we felt like was, this is whatever you're into, news and sports aside, whatever you're into, Philo has, is welcoming of that. And, we're sort of here for everybody. And so this Philo is TV for everyone became a sort of a tagline, but it was a strapline for a previous campaign we did. And it's kind of hung around. And I think that position has sort of solidified quite a bit, I think, as we, just from as a brand guy, like, as you look at like kind of the polarization of the country, I think this sort of the idea of, sort of this inclusivity, message of inclusivity is like sort of felt sort of timely and, feels like it works. And, sort of as more people are looking to TV as an escape, I think, being a kind of warm, welcoming place, that is a good sort of brand position to occupy.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. And, we've touched on growth, and Soumya, tell us a little bit about the growth strategy that's got the service to now it's 1.2 million subscribers. Is that right, or thereabouts?
That's the last announced. And let's just say we're doing really well and really happy. And look, I feel like my colleagues have talked about so many of these aspects of growth that I'm going to be sort of stealing from both their playbooks as I talk about a little bit of some of the things that we do. There are three things that I think make growth seamless and possible: technology, data, content. We think that technology should be seamless. I've talked about this a lot, right? Like people shouldn't feel like they're having to work hard to watch whatever it is that they need to watch. They need to be able to see what it is that they're seeking to see. And that what is very important, because that what, as I said, is in today's world, it could be anywhere. It could be on one of the Roku channels. It could be on Netflix. It could be on Peacock. It could be on BritBox. I don't think so, but it's all of those things, and it's but importantly, how are we using data to connect the two? Right? How are we using, because we're collecting data about what it is that people watch, when they watch, how much they watch. How are we using this data to make sure that the experience that we're delivering to the user is seamless? And it feels effortless. We think that is one of the things that we do that's magic. The second thing that I'm very proud of is, from a content itself, we set ourselves the goal of being the home of the known, the now, and the new for British. And we said it is how these three things come together, again, seamlessly, that will make the content offering compelling to the user. The idea is that you come in, you know the show, I'm watching my Agatha Christie. How do I then seamlessly introduce you to the fact that I've got the BBC proms live? We haven't been able to do that in ever. I've been trying for as long as I've been at the BBC, I've been trying to get the proms. Oh, can I get in the theaters maybe? Can I get some way to put the last night of the proms somewhere? We finally cracked that with BritBox this year. And not the least is, how do I introduce them to new shows? So there's a value that I'm adding to their subscription fee on a regular basis. I think that it's the combination of these two coming together and creating something bigger. We were very, very proud and very touched. The team has worked so hard that we got to 1 million subscribers before our 3rd anniversary. Right? And that's why I said and the 1.2 was the last announced, because we've been fortunate in that there is a ballooning effect. You bring the right person in, that right person will tell 10 other right people. And that is the effect that we're learning about, and we're capitalizing on. We have very low single-digit churn. We have very high engagement. I just saw the stats. We launched a new UX yesterday, and I was looking at that, and I'm just so thrilled. I'm so thrilled at how strong the numbers are. And I was like, no one knows that we've done this because we didn't put out a press release or anything telling people we've launched one. So I said, so the only thing I can know is on a normal Tuesday, what happens? You look at a normal Tuesday and you see people are watching a lot more. And I'm quietly celebrating, going, this is fantastic.
Soumya, you just said you launched something yesterday. Can you repeat that phrase, what it was?
It's a new website experience.
Okay. And look, you've touched on the growth, and you reached 1 million subs on around your 3rd anniversary, you said. Obviously, we're in an unprecedented year in the pandemic, and we've heard about, some exponential growth on services due to the pandemic. And I'd really like to ask each of you if you could share any latest subscriber numbers if they're available. But what about the growth in the pandemic? We know it's an extraordinary year with an asterisk, but any indication how many subscribers have come on since the lockdown?
We're not sharing those numbers just yet, but okay. My smile should tell you that we're very happy.
It's good news. Okay, great. And Rob and Matt, could you give us an update on the numbers that demonstrate growth and subscribers, if you can share those, Rob?
Sure. No, I mean, we did earnings a couple of weeks ago, so those are our kind of last public numbers. I smile because I know the constraints that Soumya and others have to manage as well. So it's we now have 43 million monthly active accounts. So that means somebody who streamed something in the last 30 days at the quarter end. So these are Q2 numbers. So in the month of June, we added 12 million active accounts. So over 40% growth year over year. Really astounding. We reported 14.6 billion streaming hours. We added 6 billion year over year, a 65% growth. In the quarter, that was 2.3 billion streaming hour growth in the quarter. We're now seeing well over 3.5 hours per user per day. I think streaming has really become the primary go-to platform for many different users. It's where they start. And they start with their streaming options, and then they look at other things. And I think that that's a really compelling transition. We already thought that this year was going to be the beginning of the decade of streaming with all the major services that are out there, launches like Disney Plus and the iconic IP that they're bringing. But I think everything as a result of COVID has really accelerated this trend where people are looking at their finances, they're seeking to save money, they're coming into the streaming experience maybe a little bit earlier than they might have otherwise because of some of these factors, and they're loving it. And so I think that, sort of all of the growth that we're seeing is I think a result of that. I think it's a really phenomenal time to be in the streaming business.
Terrific. Matt, would you like to add anything?
I mean, we've had a great run as well. I think we sort of just announced a few weeks ago that we were north of 750,000 subs. We are the fastest growing vMVPD right now. It's been a great, a lot of that growth has happened, 300%. We tripled in the last year. So there's a really strong, first half of the year. I think the pandemic has certainly helped as more people are, kind of this kind of dual situation where people are looking to save money. And so we are a really great solution for them, and more people are sitting around watching. So I think we've seen a lot more content being consumed. We've seen streams on the East Coast starting earlier in the day. The subs have been really growing, but I think, it would do a disservice to the, the sort of incredible performance team to, kind of pin it all on the pandemic, because they built this incredible machine that was really kind of firing on all cylinders, kind of pre, sort of March. And, I think it didn't slow down, and the growth continued, and we've seen, sort of, we'll kind of routinely see like, kind of concurrent user record highs, and, sort of we'll have like, best months ever and best weeks ever for, sort of new sub ads, and the churn has not, kind of bubbled up. So I think it's been a good time to kind of be doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the numbers and the smiles speak to the growth that you've all been experiencing. So that's encouraging. And now we're going to go to some audience questions. And we've got quite a few coming in already. And we have one here from Richard de Poncier. Do you see value in low budget, grassroots and short form content in backfilling catalogs for streaming services? And if so, does that help also reaching growing international markets? Maybe let's address the first part of the question about the value of low budget, grassroots, short form content. Love to talk about international growth as well, but Soumya, would you like to address that?
Yeah, I was going to say, we are working on a plan right now for short form. We've done a few things experimentally, right? Like when we did the Royal Wedding Live, we did something called TED Talks. This idea of 5-minute sort of fashion tips, food tips. What does one do around the royal wedding, right? Like we did a segment, and we were very pleased with how that worked. But then of course you can't isolate it from, was it the event or the content or the format, right? So right. We are in the process of putting together a plan for where does Matt has a load of history in doing this for us in the olden days, where you take, how do you take short form from what is broadcast worthy, what is social worthy, and what is merely bite marketing worthy, right? Like what is that component, and how do you take it through the journey? I don't know that we at BritBox have necessarily cracked that, but we are absolutely working on a short form strategy. So Richard, stay tuned.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'd like to actually give each of you a chance to answer that. Rob, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think one of the things when you think about the Roku platform is it's a TV platform, right? So generally speaking, people are sitting in their living room, or they're in a lean back experience. This isn't something they're doing while on the bus or waiting for lunch. I'm not sure anyone's doing that these days, but you can remember when we were doing that. And so short form, I think, was really great at filling certain needs, but in that kind of end of the day, lean back, I want to decompress experience, the reality that the wheel spins every 2 to 5 minutes is actually, I think, something of an impediment to short form being really compelling in that experience. And a variety of people have solved it in a number of different ways in terms of being able to connect users seamlessly from video to video. So that's some of the sort of stitched experience. So you're not actually seeing the breaks between the videos. We've actually also seen a lot of success with people in what we call our linear experience. So some of the linear experience is live. We have live partners like ABC News and others, but we also have partners who are stitching together some of these short form videos to, I think, create a more lean back experience for users. And I think that actually, we've seen a lot of engagement in those different areas, and whether that is sort of, short form or medium form kind of programming content that's been stitched together to create a longer experience, or even some folks have done it with user generated content. So we have partners on the platform who are stitching together, sort of animal fails or, sort of funny animal videos, the kind of human successes. People are awesome. People do certain things. Human failures, fail army, things like that. Some of the stuff that people get a little bit of a kick out, when they watch, maybe on mobile, but giving it in more of a TV-friendly experience. So we definitely think there's opportunities for that kind of content in this experience. Whether a shoulder content, which I think is what a lot of it's been used for historically, is sort of an add-on to a bigger thing. There's definitely that, and that's been true, I think, for TV for a while, really for the super fan. But I think for the broader audience, the kind of challenge I would pose, or the question to solve, is how do you make it a compelling, lean back 10-foot experience? Because I think that's really what's going to resonate in OTT.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Matt, what are your views on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, our entire focus on sort of the content offering is, is this value add for the consumer? And so I think there are sort of ancillary short form pieces of content that could be great. So if you are a Walking Dead super fan and then you are watching Talking Dead, like, do you want another bite or two of the apple? Like, is there an after show that you're interested in? Is there a world for like a kind of like hot takes on like the kind of reality moments of the day? I think, there are things that people would certainly want and would want to consume, but I think with short form, there are, and as Soumya mentioned, I've made a lot of this, and like, I think there are a lot of great ideas, but you have to be really okay kind of like drowning your darlings. Like, you have to ask yourself, like, what is this going to return? Like, is this Doctor Who fan going to watch? They're here, we've got them, they're coming, they like have a million places to get their short form. Like, am I like using this short form to like keep them in the ecosystem and then bring them somewhere else? Or like, is it just, sort of money that you're spending on a piece of content that isn't actually going to like demonstrably change, the sort of like the business, or, there's not really an ROI on it. So, I've made a lot of stuff that like I thought was great, but like didn't really help at the end of the day. So I think if it's gotta, you sort of really need to look at, where it's going to sit, what it's going to do, how it's going to like, kind of add value to your consumers. That being said, I think there is a short form strategy for us for sure. And, as Rob was mentioning, stitching it together, whether it's creating a like almost like a synthetic linear experience, or you are, working with your programming partners. I'd love to sort of go to Discovery and say, hey, like people really love this show on our platform. Like, what if we co-finance a sort of an after show that was exclusively on Philo? Now that's a complicated question, and there are a lot of like, kind of restraints I think that would come up, with sort of their other partners. But, I think if you can work through that, it could be an interesting way to say, we've got something over here, because a lot of channels and a lot of brands, their goal is ubiquity and they want to be everywhere. And so if you can kind of carve out a little place where this is the only spot you're going to see the sort of, love and hip hop after show, then you maybe have an interesting offering.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that, everybody. And we've had a few more questions here. People are curious. Well, let me come back to you about something, Soumya. Nina Rasmussen has been watching and listening closely, and she asks that you mentioned the importance of data. Can each of you, let's start with you, Soumya, say more about how you use audience and viewing data in your creative and business decisions?
It is such a big part of the decisions we make today. There is absolutely an art and a science, and I think that you constantly have to keep hitting it up, right? Like, you make decisions about content, yes, knowing some of the data, but the data is never going to tell you, is this show going to be a hit? It's probably going to tell you shows like this do well, or shows like this don't do so well. But all of that is so dependent on, you could have made the exact kind of show that you thought you were making that was a hit yesterday, yet it didn't come together because this cast is not as charismatic, or this tonality just is too brusque. I mean, there are so many things that go into that. So, but having said all of that, I still think that you would be remiss not to use data which is what makes this platform and this means of viewing so powerful. The fact that you know that at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday, this is the kind of pattern I should expect, right? If there's something going on in Calgary and all of a sudden Calgary is blowing up, that's an internet problem they have. It's not something you did. So I think that data is, and it's very important from a creative standpoint too. Like early on, I can tell you another thing that we did do. I mean, and all of us who love British shows wanted to be cheeky, and that is a tone that we naturally kind of drifted towards. We learned that our audience prefers the cozy more than it prefers the cheeky, right? And we quickly had to recalibrate to go, this is, you can't always speak to everybody the same way that you think you should be spoken to about the same show. So absolutely, we use data in the way we inform our creative decisions, our content decisions, our merchandising decisions, the way we are putting shows together. And there is a complete art and science in the way we're doing our algorithmic recommendations too. It's not one or the other. And we found that that's the balance that worked. Again, early in the day, we were using pure data, and we found how it was missing so many things that, again, someone who watches this would know right away. You'd be like, it doesn't mean that just because you watch this Agatha Christie, you're never going to watch Jonathan Creek. Of course you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So look, I mean, we've got quite a lot of questions coming in, so I'm just going to address one to each of you. I'm sure Rob and Matt have a lot to say about data and creative decisions too. But Matt, if I can ask you this, we have a question from Francis Haid. How do low budget art films fit into the streaming world?
I mean, I think, for me personally, they would fit in excellently. Like I'm the audience for that. I think, Soumya mentioned earlier, if you have a niche, and you really can kind of own that space, then it's, you're going to knock it out of the park and you can build a sustaining business. Now, I don't really know the, sort of the economics behind, sort of licensing those movies, but I think that there is, there's obviously an audience for it. And, so I think if you build a hyper-focused, sort of product that is really kind of like knows exactly what they are sort of selling and to whom they are selling it, you 1000% can do that, probably easier than you can. I mean, Peacock, HBO Max have, like gigantic budgets and, or sort of can, kind of like amass, huge subscriber numbers. But I think that is a much harder sell to say, like, this is what Peacock is. Like, I mean, I'm in the business. I watch all the advertising. Like, I'd have a hard time sort of like explaining in like 30 seconds what, like sort of what the product is, sort of, but I could tell you in 30 seconds what a, sort of a sort of low budget art house streaming product is. And I think that really helps. And, so you may have a cap at, 1 million, 2 million, whatever it is. I don't know the numbers on the number of subs, but I think you would go into that with data to say, we know this is the addressable audience for this, and we know that like we can capture X percentage of them, and you can build out a business and you could build out an infrastructure that could support that business. And I think it could absolutely work. I think there's, you're going to have like more of that, like hyper-focused, sort of products. And then you'll have, sort of people that are aggregating those products and, sort of bundling them up together. And, you'll get to an a la carte sort of like, I want like, these are the 4 or 5 things that I really, really care about. And like these services provide them. And, it seems like, nice.
Matt, I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt, but it seems like you just gave Rob a really good idea. Just do
listen, just send some Roku stock this way, and we're all good. You guys have had a nice run there.
Now we've got quite a few questions talking about international expansion, and Rob, I wonder if I could start with you. I think I'd like to ask each of you this. Broadly speaking, what's the thinking about international expansion for the service, and where are you at with that?
Yeah, so for the Roku channel, we've been in Canada for about 2 years now. We launched in the UK in April, and I think it's been very well received for a lot of the same reasons the Roku channel was so well received in the US and Canada when we launched it. It's a free service, and so particularly in this time with all the dynamics that we have going on with sort of both economic challenges as well as people staying at home, I think people really appreciated something that was truly free to the consumer. It was something we made available not only on the Roku platform, but also in partnership with Sky on Now TV devices, as well as on the Sky Q Advanced set-top box. And so sort of a broader launch in that marketplace. So, I think it's certainly the same kind of dynamics are available in international markets as we see in the US market. So, I think it's a greenfield opportunity. I think something that we see a lot of potential in, both for the Roku channel specifically, which is kind of my area, but for the platform overall as well.
Yeah. And Soumya, can you talk to this?
As you all know, we've announced Australia. It's launching very soon, and slightly more recently than that, we've also announced further expansion into more markets. The what of that is a stay tuned, unfortunately. But we are bullish. We're bullish. We think that the market has shown that there is an opportunity for people like us to arrive and thrive, to build upon another silly alliteration. And yeah. I do think that in the world of streaming, unlike the world of cable, there are no borders. Yes, you may have to worry about billing integrations, but the Now TV box is a Roku box. And they created something based on a wireframe that existed. So I feel like that is the world we're going to go towards, where some of these borders are just going to go away. We find this today, right? Like you're on social and you often do not know where it is that someone's asking you a question from, and you respond to it as if you're in the US because that's what you know. And you suddenly go, oh wait, this person's asking me from Denmark. Of course I don't have BritBox there yet. So why am I telling them what shows I have? So, but I think that is the world we are in.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt?
I think we're hyper focused on the US market. I think we have sort of complicated, I think, you have the brands that we sort of carry are not the same internationally. So I think there'd be a lot of, kind of building out new, a sort of a new offering that was sort of hyper focused on that individual region. It's not to say it's not a bad business, but I think for now we want to continue growing in the US and sort of scale up here. That's our goal, but I wouldn't say it's not, it's not something wouldn't look at, but it's something not something we're looking at.
Understood. Yeah. We've got a tech question here from Jean Sachs, who asks, what are the new features that you are thinking about to improve the user experience? Are there tools you think about to help address UX issues like startup, buffering, rebuffering, etc.? Matt, we're with you, right? Do you want to address that one first?
Yeah, I mean, tech is not my, sort of area of expertise, but I think we've got this incredible engineering and product team that have been, incredibly focused from the jump on building out a kind of great user experience and making it, sort of really powerful under the hood, but, sort of deceptively simple, and easy to navigate. We did just launch Philo casting, which is, sort of a Chromecast feature. That was one of our most sort of asked about sort of product features. And I think, we are constantly kind of looking at, how to evolve and, where, and we're very, very responsive to customer, sort of customer feedback, and, sort of when there's a problem, we're sort of on top of it. On the low tech side, we did just launch recently, and this is more my area. We launched a phone line for people looking to get a show recommendation. So we have a call center that will actually answer your phone calls and tell you what they think you should watch next. It's sort of the in the kind of the whimsical, kind of quirky, sort of way of doing business. I think,
I hope that's a chat bot.
I mean, we real live people answering the phone calls, and then we will pre-record about a dozen messages every couple of weeks, and sort of give you recommendations. I think we want to make sure that we're fundamentally the pipes, and the content is what's king. And so I think you need to figure out the ways you can just remind people. You want the pipes to be sort of working perfectly, but I think you need to kind of find those opportunities to remind people sort of that you're there, and why they should kind of use you.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a counterintuitive one there, which I think we're always improving our user experience. We've sort of usually have things to announce a couple times a year, so we've got some things coming down the pipe we can't really share today. But if we look at kind of things we've done recently, we launched an electronic programming guide, or an EPG, for our live linear channels, where we now have over 100 of those channels. We launched it in June, and really what we saw was this strong user desire for that kind of comfort food, that behavior that they know. And so people, I think we're in this phase of OTT transition now, where it's not these hardcore tech early adopters who are sort of going to figure it out. People who are kind of coming later in this cycle, they want it to be familiar and comfortable. And so the idea of channel surfing is something that we heard from a large number of users they were interested in, and sort of they missed that EPG experience. And so that was something that we took a while to bring it together, and really this space, which you might call, we call it live linear, some other call it like fast, free ad supported streaming. It's really exploding. There are hundreds of channels in this space today, and we're seeing it's something that users are really engaging with, particularly when it's presented to them in the way that they're familiar with, which is that old cable EPG. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, because not everything in OTT is new again. This was something that I think people associated with cable and the linear world, but you bring it over to streaming and to OTT, and people are like, oh, I know that. I know how this works. I'm going to do more of that. And I think that's one of the things that people need to recognize is this is TV. It's been around for a long time. People really like it. It's really compelling. Like, what else in the world do people spend, at least in the US, 5 hours a day with? Like, there's a lot about TV that works.
I agree. I mean, look, my colleagues talked about UX, so I'm going to talk about the other part of your question, which was buffering and video playback, which is the part that is not as simple in the world that we are in. UX is a bit more intuitive because we all use it. Unfortunately, the QoS, the quality of service from a video buffering experience is frayed and flawed on so many fronts. Not the least of which, again, sorry to pick on my friend Rob, but the 6 different Roku boxes all behave differently to the exact same video stream, right? So you're needing to think about how you are encoding and what kind of playback and what stream you surface in order to make the user experience seamless. Yes, there are tools. It just adds to the complexity of what we need to do. The QoS, the box that you're on, combined with the player that you're using, the encoding type that you've used, the internet that you're on, all of this adds to it. I'm not telling you that it's an easy answer at all. I think
I guess I'll say 2 things. So like, one of our core value propositions, like how frustrating, for many has it been where you buy a device and then 2 or 3 years later, it's outmoded and it doesn't work anymore and you have to go replace it. So one of the things that we work really hard to do is keep our devices in service. And so you can go back 5+ years and keep using Roku devices that you bought that long ago. And that's, I think, a big part of our value proposition to users is this stuff is still working many years after they bought it. So, and I recognize that, and we continue to try to solve these overall technical problems. But if you think about a device you bought 5-6 years ago, it just had different specs, right? And so how do we keep all of that working? Those are a lot of the improvements that we create on an annual basis, is to kind of drive all that. So I think that's a big part of the value we deliver to consumers. Totally recognize it has some challenges, for others, in our value chain. But I think the consumer value is really critical there. But I also think what Soumya just said really speaks to my point about why work with the Roku channel. We handle all of that, right? So if that all sounded like gobbledygook in a foreign language to you because you don't know about codecs and you don't want to know about the different Roku box platforms and their memory and everything, that's something that working directly with the Roku channel prevents you from having to get into, because we handle all that for you. And I think, as Soumya said, it's really hard. It's hard to do well. How many folks can invest in being an expert in all those problems? I think that's a really critical question for someone before they come into the direct-to-consumer space is, can I actually be good at all the things I need to be good at to meet consumers' expectations? And we think increasingly it's going to be harder for people to do that and still make money in this space. But by partnering with the Roku channel, we think that there's really an opportunity for them to focus on what they're great at and allow us to focus on what we're good at.
Okay. We're nearing the end, so I've really got a couple more questions I'm going to address to each of you. Matt, we've got a question here from Anonymous. In light of recent global events and calls for more inclusivity and diversity on television and in marketing, what efforts is your company doing to promote a more positive representation of underrepresented or traditionally marginalized groups?
It's a great question, and something we have, sort of spent a lot of time thinking about, sort of both pre, sort of recent events, and then, really kind of ratcheted it up, kind of after the fact. So on the marketing front, I think, we really try hard to think about representation in our sort of creative sort of output. So, when I'm shooting a commercial, I'm really thinking about who our audience is, who we want to have in the spot. Are we featuring diverse people in the spot? Are we, am I kind of getting some consensus from across the room about, sort of casting decision? I mean, it's as simple as like, do you make sure that you are casting people with, sort of a diverse sort of range of looks, and I'm not just using my own sort of like, sort of beauty standards to sort of cast that. I really want to make sure that I am kind of getting the right people in the spot, and the messages feel authentic and not like you're pandering, and not like you are, sort of trying to, sort of buy your way in. I think we early on saw this, really sort of big adoption amongst Black women on our service. Black sort of skewing content, content created by Black creators has done really well. And so I think there was this, sense on our side that it's just not just like the right thing to do, but it's sort of, the only thing to do is to kind of make sure that we were, building out, sort of ways to showcase that content. We've also donated this quarter $1 million worth of ad inventory to Black-owned businesses and pro-social initiatives. And I think that is an ongoing process. I mean, in addition to all of this sort of like, DEI sort of initiatives that the company is taking, and making sure that we are sort of focused on sort of diversity with our hiring practices, we wanted to use the platform to help people that maybe don't have the sort of wouldn't be buying national media otherwise, to sort of give them a voice. So we're both taking PSAs from sort of organizations that are fighting for social causes. We are taking spots from Black businesses. We in an instance where somebody doesn't have creative, we will produce the creative for them. We built out a template. So I think that's probably the the most valuable thing that we've been doing. And then as far as what shows we market, we have a small content sort of team that is really making sure that we are bringing a kind of diverse range of life experiences to think about what shows we are going to put money behind when we are kind of sort of running ads.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And I really love to ask this question to each of you, but we've only got a couple of minutes left. Soumya, one question for you. Just if you can answer fairly briefly, the strategy to commission and to co-produce content.
Short answer is yes. Yes. Reach out to our content team. I think many here might know Jonathan or Stephen on our team. Reach out to them and we'll get it into the consideration set.
Okay, all right. And finally, Rob, one for you. People are asking, it's a broad one, of course, but the TV ad business, is there any guidance on when you and other experts would expect that to recover to pre-pandemic levels?
So I am not the ad expert on our team, so I certainly there are folks who would have a much more in-depth opinion on this one. But I think stepping back and thinking about it from a viewership standpoint, right? So advertisers advertise because they want to reach potential consumers and educate them about their product. If you think about the fact that there's a large number of consumers who are now leaving the TV ecosystem as it's been known historically and making that jump to OTT, you've now got a third of all households that have cut the cord. There's also this other dynamic, which we really saw in 2008, which was when people kind of went to ground and had to take down their budgets, they didn't immediately snap back. They were sort of, I think, more thoughtful and intentional about, is this dollar going to actually grow sales for me, or is it just what I used to do? And so I think in 2008 and after, you saw this massive transition in growth towards the digital platforms. I think in large part because you could attribute the spend that you made from an advertising standpoint to revenue. And one of the things I love about OTT advertising, what Roku offers, is we have the best of the brand building capabilities of TV, where you can do sight, sound, motion, and tell a story to a potential consumer. But we also bring all of the data that advertisers have really come to value in the digital marketplace broadly. And so I think as viewers migrate from sort of traditional television to streaming, you're going to see the advertising dollars migrate as well, because they really look for those things. And I think as a result, I'm not sure you're ever going to see a recovery in TV advertising the way that it was. It's going to follow the consumers. It's going to follow the data.
Well said, sir. All of you, it's been a real pleasure talking to you and hearing your insights. Thank you very much. It's really time to wrap up the session. We could talk for longer, but we have to go. All good things come to an end. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Thanks to everyone at home for joining us, for your questions and your insights, and to our online editor, Orlando Parfit. This webinar will appear in the coming days on ScreenDaily.com. Keep checking our website for details on upcoming ScreenDaily Talks. And in the meantime, stay in touch. Let us know what you'd like to hear. And you can send ideas or comments to Screen's editor, Matt Mueller, at matt.mueller@screendaily.com. Until then, thank you, everyone. Thanks to all of you watching at home. Goodbye and take care.